So welcome to the next episode of STL. So we started STL in the last episode. So what we learned in the last episode, we learned about what is STL, why STL came into the picture, and the next thing that how many components in the STL like containers, iterators, and so on, and the advantage and disadvantage. So that we already learned in the last episode. So now continue in this episode. So today I'll start with the containers. So we all know that containers is used to contain the data, means whatever the data structure we already have learned, the same data structure like we can STL will be providing us to use that. So that is called the containers, means all the data structure, how you are containing your data and in which place you are containing your data, that is called containers. And I'll start with the vector. So I'll teach you the what is vector, how many functions we are using in vector, and we can also see that how we can use vector in our code. So in layman term I can say, so vector is a dynamic array. So like dynamic array, you can create the array at runtime, you'll means the size of the array will not fix. So it will be depending on the number of elements. So the same thing in the vector. So if you can see, it is a dynamic array, so we can resize the vector at runtime. In vector, by default data is inserted at the end, but even if you want to insert the data from at the beginning or maybe in the middle, you can, and it will take a linear time. So if you are inserting the data, it will take a differential time, because sometimes there may be need of the extending the array, means you have to resize of that particular array if the size is full. Then the next thing, that removing the data from the last in the vector will take a constant time, and the reason because there is no resizing happening. As I told that inserting and erasing from the beginning and the middle, it will take a linear time, it will not take much time for that. So this is the brief introduction about the vector. So now we can talk about the functions, whatever the functions will be used in the vector. I'll just divided all the functions in different parts. So the first part is iterator. So in iterator, the one function is the begin. So begin will return the iterator pointer of the first element of the vector, and the same thing in the end. So end will return you the last pointer of the last element of the vector. So R begin, so it will be the reverse order. So it will return the reverse iterating pointing to the last element, and the same thing the reverse end. So reverse end will give you the first element, pointer of the first element. Next function is C begin. So C begin will return you the constant pointer which will be pointing the first element of the vector. Next function is C end, and the same thing, that C end will return you the constant pointer that will be pointing the last element of the vector. Next function is CR begin, and as the name suggested, that it will return you the constant reverse iterator which will be pointing the last element of the vector. And the same thing like in the function like CR end. So CR end function will return you the constant reverse iterator which is pointing to the first element of the vector. So these all functions are using in iterator, but mostly you will use begin and end for the iteration. So next, some functions I just put it in the capacity. So the size, so size will return you how many number of element of the vector. The max size, so next function is max size. So max size will be return you the maximum number of the element that the vector can hold. So this is the difference between size and max size. Size returns the number of elements, how many elements existing in the vector, and max size will return that how many numbers can be inserted in the vector. Next function is capacity. So, capacity will return you the size of the storage space. Next function is resize, and it will get the size as a parameter. It will resize. So, suppose if you have to resize your vector in between the program executions, you can do a resize and you can pass what will be the new size of the particular vector. And next is the empty. So, empty will return whether the vector containers is empty or not. So, it will return the boolean. So, next function is shrink to fit. So, shrink to fit, it will reduce the capacity of the container and fit its size and destroy all the elements beyond the capacity. Means whatever the capacity of the vector, it will fit all elements in the in that capacity and destroy all other elements which is beyond the capacity. The next function is reserve. So, reserve function will request the vector capacity should have at least the enough space to store an elements. So, that is the use of the reserve. The next function I put it in the element access. So, in this element access, one function is reference operator. So, reference operator is used to get the reference at the position G in the vector. The next function is at. So, at is used to get the element at a particular position. The next one is front. It will return the first element of the vector. The next function is back. Back will return the last element of the vector. And the last function in element access is data. So, data return the direct pointer to the memory address. So, it will give you the pointer to the memory address where the particular element has been stored in the memory. Now, we can move on the modifiers. So, I put some functions in the modifier. These functions are used to modify our containers. The first function in the modifiers is assign. So, assign is used to assign the new value in the vector and replace the old ones. It will replace the old value with the new value. The next function is pushback. So, pushback is used to insert the data at the end of the vector. The next function is popback. So, popback function is used to remove and pop the elements from the last in the vector. The next function is insert. Insert function is used to insert a new value before the element at the specific position. It will insert a new element before from the specific positions. Next function is erase. So, erase is used to remove the element from the containers and it will remove from the specific positions, or it can also use the range. So, it will remove the data in range from the vector. The next function is swap. So, swap function is used to swap the contents of one vector to another vector. So, in this case the size may be differ, it is not mandatory the both vector size should be same. Next function is clear. So, clear is used to remove all elements in the vector. Next function is in place. So, in place extends the container by inserting a new element in at the specific position. Next function is in place back. So, it is used to insert a new element and that element will be inserted at the end of the vector. So, this is all about the theoretical part, and I will create a separate video for the practical things. Thank you. Thanks for the watching till the end.